the secret echo of conversations we never had. Hello, Mind Explorers. Welcome to our Thought Lab. Today we're doing something different, a deep dive, a journey through 5 increasingly profound levels of understanding to unravel one of the most intimate and universal mysteries of our existence. We'll talk about those words caught in our throats, the questions we never asked, the apologies we didn't offer, and the I love yous that got lost in the silence. Today we're going to explore the echo of conversations we never had. And no, we won't just scratch the surface of nostalgia or regret. We'll go much, much deeper, because understanding why these phantom conversations haunt us is understanding the secret mechanism that governs much of our memory, our decisions, and our very identity. I promise you something. By the end of this journey, the way you perceive your own memories and those silences from the past will have changed forever. Let's begin our descent. Level 1, the familiar surface. We've all been there. That moment, days or even years after a situation, when you suddenly think, I should have said that. It's the most common and recognizable echo. It's that persistent feeling of a missed opportunity, of a door that closed because we lacked the right words at the right time. It is, in essence, regret in its purest form. Another aspect we're all familiar with is rumination. That's what psychologists call that mental broken record, where we replay a past scene over and over, imagining all the alternative dialogues we could have had. This phenomenon directly affects our behavior. It can make us more timid or, conversely, more impulsive in the future, out of fear of being silent again, of letting silence win the day again. Think of an example almost all of us share. Not telling a loved one, perhaps a grandparent or a friend who is no longer with us, how much they meant to us. That silence isn't an emptiness, it's a loud presence that stays with us. And a third basic fact about this topic is that these unhad conversations aren't exclusive to negative events. Sometimes the strongest echo comes from unshared joys or unexpressed gratitude. This mechanism has a very deep evolutionary origin. Our brain is a social simulation machine. It's designed to learn from mistakes and improve our future interactions to ensure survival within the group. Imagine our ancestors. A communication error could mean exile from the tribe, which was practically a death sentence. So the brain developed a kind of regret alert system to ensure we wouldn't make the same social mistake twice. What we've just described is the tip of the iceberg. It's what we all feel, what we all see on the surface of the water. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret engines are powering it from below? Level 2, the hidden mechanisms. Here comes the first big revelation. Much of this echo is a product of what's known as counterfactual thinking, a complex word for a very simple idea, our brain's tendency to create and compare reality with alternative versions of what could have been. This is fundamental. Your brain doesn't just store the past, it constantly rewrites it. It generates alternative versions, and the pain you feel is the distance between reality and that idealized version you just invented. Now here's what's interesting. This mechanism has a double edge. On one hand, we can use it as a tool for opportunity. Actively analyzing those alternative versions of an unsuccessful conversation allows us to prepare for the future. For example, if your mind went blank in a job interview, your brain will replay that scene. Instead of just regretting it, you can use that simulation to prepare a brilliant response next time. It's a mental training ground. But here's the risk. The same mechanism can become a dangerous trap. When counterfactual thinking obsessively focuses on the past without a learning purpose, it becomes a poison that fuels anxiety and depression. An example of this risk is obsessing over a breakup, replaying every conversation and thinking, if only I had said this, we'd still be together. That's a red flag, a sign that the mechanism is using you instead of you using it. Now let's talk about an invisible rule that governs all of this. It's a principle discovered in psychology that explains why these unresolved issues have so much power over us. It's called the Zeigarnik Effect. Simply put, our brain remembers incomplete or interrupted tasks much better than those we've finished. An unhad conversation is, for our brain, the most unfinished task of all. It's a tab left open in our mind's browser, consuming RAM. You see it every day? It's why a TV series that leaves you on a cliffhanger obsesses you for days, much more than a movie with a closed ending that you forget the next day. Unsaid words are the biggest cliffhanger of our lives. The internal structure of this echo connects directly with our brain's shortcuts, with those little mental tricks it uses to process the world faster. And one of the most important ones here is called hindsight bias. This bias is like a design flaw in our memory. Once we know the outcome of an event, our brain rewrites the story so that outcome seems obvious and predictable from the start. It's that voice that tells you, I knew that would happen. To counteract this trap, there's a very powerful mental strategy. Before an important conversation, practice what some call a pre-mortem. Imagine the conversation has already happened and it was a disaster. Now ask yourself, what could I have said or not said to make it go so wrong? By recognizing this hindsight trap, what you should proactively do is be more compassionate with yourself. Remember that at the time, you didn't have the information you have now. You weren't a fortune teller. You were a person making decisions with incomplete information. Think about it. The oral tradition, the custom of telling stories from generation to generation, shaped how our memory works. We are programmed to seek narratives with a beginning, a middle, and an end. A pending conversation is a story without an end, and our brain abhors that. The practical takeaway for today is clear. If you can't have the conversation in real life, at least give it an ending in your mind. Write a letter you'll never send, or simply consciously decide what the ending of that story will be for you. Close the tab. And this leads us to the key takeaway for real life. The most important conclusion from everything we've seen at this level. The general rule is this: the echoes of conversations we didn't have are rarely a faithful reflection of the past. They are active constructions of our present. So, in your daily life, when one of these echoes haunts you, remember to ask yourself, is this memory serving me to learn and improve, or is it anchoring me to a fictional version of the past that harms me? The answer to that question changes everything. It's incredibly liberating to understand that you are not a prisoner of your past, but the architect of your memories. You have more power over those echoes than you think. But if you thought we had it all figured out, get ready, because here things get truly chaotic. Level 3, the chaos of reality. Let's dive into the first major controversy. Is this echo, this regret for what was unsaid, fundamentally good or bad for us? On one hand, you have psychologists and philosophers who argue that regret is an indispensable tool for moral and personal growth. It's the engine of change. On the other hand, you have schools of thought, especially some currents in positive psychology and Buddhism, that view it as a source of unnecessary suffering that should be eradicated. What's at stake here is a fundamental tension between learning and well-being. Should we accept the pain of these echoes in order to evolve, or should we seek peace of mind by getting rid of them, even if that means not learning the lesson? Now, let's challenge a very popular belief, the idea of closure. The notion that you need to have that final conversation to close the chapter and move on. This is one of the most widespread myths. The reality is that, in many cases, seeking that conversation only reopens old wounds or creates new ones. True closure doesn't come from an external source, but from an internal decision. We love to believe in the myth of closure because, as we said before, our brain loves complete stories. It desperately seeks an ending. The idea that a person or a conversation will give us that the end is incredibly seductive, though often an illusion. And this leads us to a fascinating paradox, the paradox of honesty. We're taught that we should always tell the truth, be transparent, and express what we feel. But what if many of the conversations we never had were better left unsaid? Sometimes silence is an act of kindness. Sometimes the words we hold back prevent immense pain for another person. This places us in a philosophical dilemma with no easy solution between authenticity and compassion. Let's briefly adopt a critical viewpoint on our current culture, which seems obsessed with radical self-expression. The ethical objection is this: is the need to say everything you think an act of courage, or is it often an act of selfishness disguised as authenticity, where we prioritize our need to vent over the well-being of the other person? And here's another controversy: memory itself. To what extent can we trust our recollection of those conversations that never happened? Throughout history, we've moved from seeing memory as a perfect archive to understanding it, thanks to neuroscience, as something incredibly malleable and unreliable. The debate today is no longer whether memory is accurate, but whether its purpose is to be accurate at all. All of this connects with the human condition in a very profound way. We are the only creatures, as far as we know, who can be tormented by ghosts of their own past and by futures that will never exist. The fundamental problem this creates for us as a species is a mismatch. We have the cognitive ability to imagine infinite better pasts, but we are trapped in the single, irreversible arrow of time. And in that abyss between the possible and the real, much of human suffering is born. As you can see, there are no easy answers. The topic is a labyrinth of good intentions, brain mechanisms, cultural myths, and ethical dilemmas. You've survived the chaos. Now it's time to see the details that separate the curious from the true experts. Level 4, Expert Insight. Here's a concept you probably won't find in a quick search. The French phrase l'esprit de l'escalier, which literally translates to staircase wit, it describes that frustrating moment when the perfect retort, the devastating argument, or the clever quip comes to you, not during the conversation itself, but when you're already leaving, descending the stairs. It's the technical name for the echo of "I should have said." The best analogy to explain why this happens is to think of your brain as a library. The answer you needed was there, but the librarian, pressured by the moment, couldn't find the book in time. Only when the pressure is gone do they calmly appear with the book in hand. And this leads me to talk about a key but often forgotten figure in this story, a Lithuanian psychologist named Bluma Zeigarnik. In the 1920s, she was sitting in a cafe in Vienna and noticed that waiters perfectly remembered the orders of tables that hadn't paid yet, but forgot the orders as soon as the bill was settled. It was she who discovered that Zeigarnik Effect we talked about, becoming the secret hero who gave a name to why unfinished things haunt us. Now let me present an alternative, slightly rebellious theory. What if these echoes aren't a mistake or a burden, but one of our brain's most sophisticated functions? This perspective says that unhad conversations aren't about the past, but about the future. They are our brain's simulation system, running thousands of scenarios to better prepare us for the incredible complexity of future social interactions. It's not a lament, it's training. And here's a counterintuitive detail that scientific research has revealed. Brain scans, like fMRI, have shown that the areas of the brain that activate when we recall our past are almost the same as those that activate when we imagine our future. This clashes with our intuition because we feel a very clear difference between remembering and imagining. But for our brain, the distinction is blurry. The past isn't a movie we watch. It's a canvas on which we constantly paint our possible futures. And here's one last detail that connects several of the ideas we've discussed. The pain of regret for what was unsaid activates the same areas in the brain as physical pain. Think about it for a second. This means that when we say our heart aches over something we didn't say, we're not speaking figuratively. At a neurological level, that echo, that phantom conversation is physically hurting you. It's real. Reaching this level of detail gives us a much more authentic and compassionate view of ourselves. We're not crazy for dwelling on things. We're biologically programmed to feel these echoes in an incredibly profound way. From here, we enter uncharted territory. Do you dare to look towards the final frontier? Level 5, the final frontier, speculation and awe. Let's consider a futuristic idea. What if technology allowed us to relive those conversations? Not just in our minds, but in a hyper-realistic virtual reality simulation? In 100 years, you could upload the data of a deceased loved one into an AI and finally have that unhad conversation. Would that be the definitive healing tool or the most dangerous psychological trap ever created? And this is where science reaches its limit. Neuroscience can explain how the brain generates these echoes. It can map every neuron involved, but it can never answer the fundamental question, why? What is the meaning of all this? And when science stops, philosophy steps in. Because this question isn't about neural circuits, it's about purpose, identity, and the meaning of our existence. Here's a mind-bending philosophical implication. What if what defines you isn't the sum of your actions and words, but the contour of your silences? Perhaps your true identity lies in the ghost of the person you could have been if you had had those conversations. This connects with the future of humanity in a very direct way. Most major conflicts, from family disputes to international wars, are often based on misunderstandings, assumptions, on crucial conversations that never took place. Mastering the art of managing these echoes, both personally and collectively, could be the key to deactivating hatred and fostering empathy. It's learning to speak not only with others, but with the ghosts of what went unsaid. And here's the final idea. The most provocative assertion of this journey: human consciousness is not a single voice, but a chorus. A constant dialogue between the I that is and the infinite I's that could have been. You are not a single melody. You are the melody and the echo, and learning to live with it is perhaps the great art of being alive. Our descent through the 5 levels has ended. Now, from the deepest depths, I invite you to look up and contemplate the full panorama we've traversed together. Remember that at the beginning, when we were on the surface, we talked about that simple and familiar feeling of thinking, I should have said this. Prepare for the contrast. We compared that simple pang of regret with the final idea we've reached, that our very identity is a complex tapestry woven not just from what we did, but from the vast universe of what we didn't do. From every silenced conversation, every untaken path. It's been an incredible journey. We've moved from an everyday feeling to the brain's hidden mechanisms, to the chaos of ethical dilemmas, to the secrets of science, and finally, to the awe of the biggest philosophical questions. And now I leave you with a very personal question. From this entire journey, what idea, what echo has impacted you the most? I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for dedicating your time and attention to exploring these ideas with me. It's been a true privilege. Please share your thoughts in the comments. The echo of your thoughts is what brings this community to life. If these kinds of deep dives fascinate you, subscribe so you don't miss the next descent, and share this video with someone you think it might resonate with. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop wondering. Until next time. And you, which echo will you answer?